This instructional video is to offer clarification on the Glynn-Johnson 100 series overhead stop installation instructions for dimensions. First thing to do is to determine what kind of hinges you're using, whether you have butt hinges, swing clear hinges, offset, concealed. One thing to note is most continuous hinges are grouped with your 4.5 butt hinge or swing clear. In this case, we'll be using the example of a 4.5 inch wide butt hinge, which tells us it's mounting group 2. Now, page 1 also has important information as far as what the dimensions mean, so you'll have to refer back to this page probably more than once. You have your A dimension, which is the start of the device cutout on the top of the door edge. Your D dimension, which is the overall length of that cutout. You have your C dimension, which is from the pivot point of the cutout to the start of the face cutout. And then your E dimension, which is the length of the cutout on the face of your door. And then you have your B dimension, which is from the pivot point of your hinge to the pivot point of the jam bracket on the frame. For the next step, we're going to skip page 2 and go straight to page 3 to get the dimensions we need. You have this chart here with a bunch of dimensions on it, but most of them you won't need. Now, I already know with 4.5 inch butt hinges, I need to be on mounting group 2. I have a 36 inch door, so that falls into the range of 33 1/16 to 39, which tells me I should be using a 104. I also want a 90-degree swing. So I have these dimensions here, which would be your A, B, C, and E. And over to the right, you have your D dimension, and then your I dimension, which is mostly just for reference material. It's the length of your arm from the pivot point on the door portion to the pivot point on the jam bracket. Now with these dimensions, we can go back to page 2 and start mounting up a device. Page 2 has your actual mounting information, but for this you'll have to refer to both pages 1 and 3. I'm going to start on the bottom half. Your first dimension is going to be A, which is from the pivot point to the start of the channel cutout, plus your D dimension, which is the length of the channel cutout to the end. That also tells you that it needs to be 3/4 of an inch deep. And we're using butt hinges, so we're going to use the arm side, one cutout on one side. Tells you that from the center line of the door needs to be 1.25 inches wide. Now your next dimension is going to be E, which is your door face cutout. Now based on page 3, your E length is going to be 22 1/8. And the start of that cutout is your C dimension, which based on the chart from 3 should be 4 15/16. Now, if you have a hold open function, you also have to calculate for this bottom cutout here. Now that will be your A dimension plus 2 3/8. So in this case, for a 104, it would be 11 7/8 plus 2 3/8. And then this channel is 5.5 inches long. And over here on the right, tells you that that channel needs to be 1 inch deep. Now for the frame portion, tells you that from the center line of the door is where you're marking your pivot point. And the jam bracket is 3.5 inches long. From the pivot point to the end of the jam bracket is 3 1/8. And then you calculate your screw holes going back from the end of the bracket.